Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me from Curdside at the Applebee's, big round of applause for Sejohn Sarowick. Sejohn?
Oh, oh no, 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 man. Ugh. You know the pink spot and Cat in the Hat.
Yeah?
I got that going right now on my desk. I had a coffee spot, and I thought, oh, I'll just clean this up real quick. And the more that I'm like rubbing it to clean it up, it's just spreading. It's everywhere.
I
Oh,
really like that this is how you shifted away from the Applebee's dig. All kudos to you. Is that the second Cat in the Hat? Is that the return of
yes, I
the Cat in
believe
the
that
Hat? Yeah.
the Cat in the Hat came back or something like that. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I think it's
No, I think it's the Return of the Cat in the Hat. I think you're
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Where he has a bunch of little cats under his hat, and then they're from A to Z, and then under the Z hat is the one that can, basically erase the universe. Look, I love Theodore Gassell. We've talked about him before on this show, Dr. Seuss for the uninitiated, but he had some thoughts, huh?
Uh, yeah, anybody ever interested in like really kind of getting into some cool like if you feel like you're past the age to read like Dr. Seuss books, that's fine. He made art for you too. Like go out there and look up some of the darker art of Dr. Seuss. And you'll find some pretty rad stuff, including a couple of movies that he made that are fucking mind-bending. Like Inception before Inception style movies. Like
I mean, I think I've told this story here before. If not, I even if I have, I'm telling it again. I once woke up. I had to have been like 10 years old because I lived in Rhode Island. That's the only point of reference I have for this. But I woke up with a fever dream, and on my television was The Search for Dr. Seuss. And that movie's a fever dream in its own right.
right.
So
Yeah.
watching it, like, sick, not feeling well, I'm still not entirely convinced that I didn't make it up. If I hadn't found it on IMDb, I wouldn't believe it exists.
The
So you're
my
not
first
wrong.
yeah, my first introduction to non-Seuss Dr. Seuss was actually a movie I think based on one of his books, but it's The Thousand Fingers. I forget what the full title is, but it's the piano. It's the kid all about like learning to play the piano,
Yeah.
and it is the it, it fucked me up, and I think I was 13 when I saw it. I'm not proud at how much it might have fucked me up as a 13-year-old man. Child at like a fucking sleepover. Somebody was like, yo, you gotta see this shit, and like we put it on, and I was like, I do not need to see this shit. What are you doing to me?
What has happened to Dr. Seuss?
Yeah,
That's when
fucking
I
wild
started
stuff.
calling him Theodore, like Theodore Gassell. He was never Dr. Seuss to me again.
Also, if
Which,
anybody out there wants to subject themselves to the Cat in the Hat movie with Mike Myers and talk to me about it sometime, I'm very interested to talk to somebody about that movie. I saw it. I saw it like on a TV at like 3 o'clock in the morning while working for CVS. Like we had like a rotation of movies to put into the display DVD player that we had at CVS. And so like that's my only reference point for it. Don't feel like I need any more than that, but I would like to talk to some people about some choices that were made in that movie.
I have never seen it because I saw
Mm.
The Grinch, starring Jim Carrey,
Ah,
and was
yeah.
like, I don't think I ever need to see a live action adaptation of the Dr. Seuss stories ever again.
Yeah, your feelings about the Grinch, as much as I may not agree with them, I feel like would be amplified tenfold with the Cat in the Hat. So, yeah.
Well,
But we don't even need to like it's not even one that I feel like we need to watch here at this show if that gives you some idea of my impression of that movie.
yeah, well that's good because I was sitting here quivering in my little high tops, like, Season gonna make me watch the Cat in the Hat because I don't think I can do it. I
Not
just
this
don't
year.
think I can. Not that. Well, yeah. Oh, because we already have everything planned out, right?
You're right.
This
There
is
you go.
foreshadowing too. Can
Mhm.
you solve the riddle of the discussion? But that's not what's important today. What's important today is that we're here and we're recording an episode of the Say Report. So, Sejan, what have you been up to, big guy? Big guy?
Oh man. So this was my week of kind of diving into some new watching. We put the call out a couple of weeks ago of like, anything that we should be really getting into in our COVID watching because of the new, the new world that we now live in, right? So like in that, this week also saw like the premiere of a bunch of really good shit. Like for instance, the Umbrella Academy season 2 came out this week, so started that for sure. Also decided to dive into some Watchmen, and I am I'm gonna start putting something into the water now in in this show, so that it does not come out of left field when we inevitably have to have the conversation about it. But in watching the new series of Watchmen, I am inclined to go and watch some of the Zack Snyder Watchmen, if not maybe like the full cut. Like I feel if I'm gonna do this, I might as well like dive all the way into the water, right? So I might do like the 6 hour cut of Snyder's Watchmen. And I say this because I don't want this to be as a surprise, because we're probably going to be talking a lot about Snyder and HBO and all of that sort of stuff that are kind of connected to this a lot over the coming year.
Oh, you mean all those things that are baked into the DNA of this show? They're gonna
Yeah.
come back.
Well, the stuff that it's one of those things where Snyder, we're probably going to end up talking a lot more about in the ways that we talk about dudes like Edgar Wright and Nolan. Like we bring them up from time to time and talk about their work and how even if we don't always love it, there's reasons for it to be seen. Tarantino, like I I I don't want it to be a surprise to anybody that I feel that way about Zack Snyder, because I know over the years I have on this show given the dude a lot of crap, and I still have my trepidation about like focusing on him in any like meaningful artistic way. But I'd be stupid to ignore the impact that that dude is going to have on nerddom going forward, and has already had, to be honest. Like, right? It'd be dumb to ignore that. So yeah, so I started Watchmen, and it just got me thinking a lot about like Snyder and the movie version of that, and I just I am very very curious to see where the rest of Watchmen goes. I'm only 3 episodes in. It is super rad right now. Super fucking heavy, which like I'm actually really happy about, because like it needed to be. I compared it on Twitter. I was like, this is a better sequel already, 3 episodes in, to the entirety of Doomsday Clock, the DC crossover with the Watchmen universe that they did, which was the quote unquote sequel to the Watchmen universe. And like it really is, because I don't know if you read any of Doomsday Clock or have
No.
seen any of Watchmen or anything like that. Yeah, Doomsday Clock was interesting. It, it's one of those things where like it was a lot of people trying to emulate the original, and like that's always, you're always starting off on the wrong foot in that. If you're, in my book, that is like not the way to go, right? Whereas like the TV series does not feel like it's trying to emulate the movie or the comics. It feels like it's trying to be its own thing just within that universe, which I think is a much better approach, right? Like it doesn't, like there's not like beat for beat moments that I'm like pointing to where I'm like, oh, this is just like when this happened in the movie, or this is like when this happened in the first book, or like whereas in Doomsday Clock the whole thing is like this whole idea of parallel universes, and like how like things that happen in our universe are paralleled or different from what happens in the Watchmen universe. And it's just a very very, it's a hard read unless you're like a super fan. I feel like the books are, whereas like the show, I've heard dozens of people in my own personal life, and from what I can tell from internet, scuttlebutt, like a lot of people who have never seen the movie, never read the book, and anything like that, still very much enjoying the HBO show, which happens with HBO. You get people that are like, I didn't read Game of Thrones, but that show is fucking great, right? Like that happens. Yeah, man. Watchmen's pretty fucking rad. It's a hard watch, but not because of quality. Like it's fucking stellar in terms of quality. But man, it's rough.
Yeah, so you bring up Doomsday Clock as the sequel to Watchmen, and that's sort of where I stalled out in this conversation, because the unfortunate official sequel to Watchmen came out in 2011. I
Mm.
was working on the Pastore complex in Cranston, Rhode Island, just for reference, point of reference. And I was about 5 minutes away from a comic shop, so I got really into comic books again, because my job was sitting at a desk typing up court records, and it was a lot of waiting for court records to be dropped in my inbox. So I would stop at this comic shop on my lunch, buy a bunch of stuff, and then go from there. It's what got me into IDW Ninja Turtles, which is really crazy when I think about it in those terms, considering the fact that on the Carnival Dream, all I did was read the IDW Ghostbuster books and kind of feel like they were lacking. And yet Ninja Turtles comes around and I'm like, yes, please, give me more. I didn't even consider that it was IDW until they started doing the same missteps that Ghostbusters had done, to be just completely honest about it. But one of those things that came out in 2011 was the After Watchmen series, which was awful in like no uncertain terms. And I'm not talking like, that's a subjective, that's my opinion, but also on a level of objectivity, like it just was handled very poorly.
It was not a good time it was not a good time in the DC Vertigo house around that time, to be fair. 2011 is a rough time in their history of them trying to figure out what the fuck they're gonna do. I
will always remember Alan Moore in an interview regarding After Watchmen and how he felt about it, saying that he disagrees. He always felt that he had told a complete story with the Watchmen series. And he thinks it's strange that anybody who would read the After Watchmen series would do it knowing that the original creator of the property held you in open contempt. And I'm just like, well, that's like the most Alan Moore thing
that's
I've
the most
read.
Alan Moore that's ever Alan Moore. Yeah,
and I shared that with the people because I'm like, I can't, like, that's him being himself, like in every way. That is Alan Moore. And a lot of people were like, that's awful, that's a terrible thing, I don't know how anyone could ever say that. But you know, when you create something, when you pour your heart and your mind into something, and you think that it's done, and then years later, just because somebody owns it and thinks that you could wring cash out of it, like it's ripe for a renaissance and a reissuing and a reappearance on the scene. And After Watchmen kind of just looks at everything that happened in Watchmen and is like, let's just tell another story in this universe, but not really focus on whatever happened before.
Does it?
I only read one book, and I'm going to be honest with you, it was that bad that I didn't go in deeper.
Yeah, well, so I think that where the TV show is succeeding for me right now is that thematically it feels very in line with a lot of what Watchmen was attempting to do. I mean, you know, at the time, definitely considered a success. I know that people like to rip it apart now, especially because Alan Moore has not made many friends in this universe. But there's this sense of like, the idea of history is written by the winners being an important like theme throughout all of that, and that's a huge part of the new show. There's also the idea of alternate histories and about how one change, the ripple effect of one thing, right? Like, and that comes down to even just the climax of the original Watchmen being that an alien invasion is what basically makes Earth come to terms with world peace, right? Is like, and so there's this huge aspect to Watchmen that I feel is being treated really well in the new series, in that it is all about ripple effects. It is all about how one person's choice to make a change here can affect these people there, and then on top of that, it's also about dealing with. There's also the idea of like, when he created Watchmen, he's clearly dealing with the fact that these people are broken, but they're attempting to do good, and all of them have different reasons for doing good. And for some of those people, those reasons hold up over time. So you have guys like Night Owl and Rorschach and Silk Spectre who continue to still be good people and continue to try and do good and succeed in a lot of ways because their reasons for doing it are good reasons, whereas somebody like the comedian whose only reason for doing good is just this weird fucking sense of like racism and power, like that is why he likes being a superhero, and because of that, that's why he falls, right? Like there's all of these like implications about like good and evil in it, and again they're toying and it's it's gray. Like like you notice I mentioned Rorschach as being one of the three good people in that story, but anybody that's read that story is probably screaming at their their fucking speakers right now, being like he's not the good guy in that, and I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, well,
But
good is not that good is subjective. It's
yeah,
that he's honorable
yes.
in a strange way,
No,
in the
I think
way
that's a better
that
way to put
yeah,
it. Yeah,
that the Punisher is also honorable, even though he goes out and just straight murders people. Like, there's that whole thing where the police forces have adopted the Punisher symbol, and
right,
Frank Castle would never stand for that because
right.
that's not. He's like, no, you're a broken system. That's why I need to exist. That's why I
Like
feel I have to do what I
a huge
do.
a huge factor in my family getting killed was corrupt police force. Like that was yeah. Um,
It's,
yeah, man. Yeah, so there's a lot of difficult stuff in that book, right? And I feel like the show is really treating it that way. Whereas like Doomsday Clock and I honestly completely forgot about it after Watchmen. Like
yeah,
you
I know.
saying it
That's
sparks like a memory of it, but the big thing in Doomsday Clock is because it's the Justice League meeting these people, like there still has to be this semblance of like good and evil, and they try and toy with the idea of the gray, but like they can't ever go that far because it's still the fucking Justice League. At the end of the day, it's still Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, right? Like it's not, you know. um, yeah, so I don't know. I'm just very much enjoying the show so far. I have not finished it yet, but the stuff that it's playing with is great. Also, I have to give it props because it pulled a fast one on a lot of its audience. Where one of the other big things about, as I mentioned with Watchmen, is alternate history, right? And there are a lot of people that have admitted to me that they thought the opening scene of the series was an alternate history, not realizing that it was the actual Tulsa. Like I
Massacre
don't
of
know, massacre is
1921.
the right word. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it. Nope, that actually happened, like upsettingly that actually happened, but I think they knew that that's how people were going to react to it. I think there were a lot of people out there that were going to see that, think it was like some alternate history because it's Watchmen, it's alternate, and then like in learning that that was not is a real like come to Jesus moment for you as a viewer, right? And so like it's really meta in that way, which I think is also really rad.
You want to
Yeah.
talk meta? This is exactly what John Oliver did on Last Week Tonight. This week is
Hmm.
talk about that exact scene in Watchmen and how
Oh
for
man.
most of this country it was the first time that they heard about it. And then going a step further, he showed an interview with somebody who grew up in Tulsa and in 1998 when he was in college was being told about it by a professor. He's like, "No, that never happened. I live there. Why are you saying these things occurred? Because that's not true."
Right.
Like, that's how you're not wrong. And that was a very interesting thing for them to do with this series. It's something that I am aware of because it is the opening. And hearing that opening and knowing what I know and all of that, I was very excited to watch Watchmen. The only reason that I haven't dived in, it has nothing to do with I didn't really enjoy the film. I think After Watchmen was a waste of time. I don't want Alan Moore to hold me in contempt. Like, that's a big thing. But
Yeah.
the big fact is there was something magical about waiting for the first season of Doom Patrol to be done and then just sitting down and consuming it as one packaged deal. And that was my plan with Watchmen. It was, I'm just going to wait until it's finished and then consume it. But then the wind was taken from my sails when it was revealed that there wasn't going to be a second season.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this series, where the series goes, knowing that. See, like I kind of always assumed it was going to be a limited series because like I was kind of leery about them even trying it. So like it was actually kind of good news to me that they were like we're not going to do more than the one. So it's part of the reason that actually got me kind of into the idea of watching it, because it also on top of that I'm not committing myself to a life of like watching the show, right?
Yeah, and that's a very good point, but it just it lowered its priority on my
Yeah.
list of things to watch
Yeah.
when there are shows that were going to come back in the fall that I wanted to make sure I was done with.
Right. Yeah.
And now who knows what's going to happen with things. The only shows that are producing new episodes each week are Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's because they were all recorded, and we're down to the last 3 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Pour one out for you boys. And United We Fall, which is a not very good sitcom on ABC.
The Will Sasso one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jane Curtin and I can't think of his name, Guillermo Diaz. Like, really good actors, but it's such a flat series. Like, I feel like it just exists.
Felt that same way about the Fran Drescher one that came out earlier this year.
Yeah.
With Adam Pally in it and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Stephen Webb. I mean, like
Steve Weber, who's great.
Steve Weber. I mean, yeah, like a fantastic fucking cast on that show. But man, like, just kind of meh. Like, no joy, no hook, no. Yeah, it was very weird.
Yeah, and that's a weird thing that I'm noticing a lot more with the things that are being produced. And it's even stranger where you consider where we are now. Like, they seem like products of the world we currently live in, not products of the world a production year ago. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it almost feels like they're purposely made like out of time and emotion. Like, I don't feel like Indebted existed in a world that I've ever lived in. It feels like an alternate universe, really. And so like the whole idea of a situation comedy, right, is that I'm supposed to be able to be like relating to that. And I just didn't relate to shit in the first couple of episodes of Indebted.
I mean, that being said, United We Fall, my parents really like it, and the reason my parents really like it is because they are Will Sasso and Will Sasso's wife. I do not know her name. She has been in like 7 things, like maybe 17, but 7 things where she was like a recurring or a main character. Like, she has a very small IMDb page because I wanted to see him. Like, you're very similar to me. Like, I have memories of you in something else, and it's just that she's been a utility player since like the 90s in episodes of ER and such. So, but they love it because it's them. Like, right down to the fact that Will Sasso's mother lives with them. And at the time where I would be the children's age, right? Because they have a 4-year-old.
Right.
My father's mother lived with us. So I feel like it works for them and they enjoy it because it does reflect situations that they went through.
Right.
But I don't remember. I mean, I do remember being 4 years old because I have an insane brain. But the stuff that's happening to the 4-year-old, that never happened to me because I didn't live in a world where I had an iPad.
Yeah.
I didn't live in a world where, spoilers for the pilot episode of United We Fall, I got a prolapsed rectum. Like, that's how the first episode starts, is their 4-year-old, her anus falls out.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And it's just like, wow, that's something. And, you know, everyone else in the house was like, oh my God, is that a real thing? And I'm like, yeah, no, that's a real thing. You gotta live in the world, guys.
Oh,
it's
man.
scary. The world's a scary place.
Well, and you know, you say that, and like I just watched this weekend the Bob's Burgers, the end towards the end of the last season, the poop episode.
I haven't seen it.
It's super sweet. They do an entire episode about Louise having constipation, and it is actually one of the sweetest Louise and Bob storylines they've done in a while. They always do really good like subplots and stuff with them, and like offhanded comments about how much the two of them truly do love each other. But like, it reminded me of like the first episode where they deal with the wolf and pup, but it's not wolf and pup. What is the surrogate for it?
Oh, it's pup. You know, it's not cub. It's not wolf and cub.
It's not wolf and cub.
Chicken. I think chicken pup, maybe. It's chick, though. I know that chick is the little one.
Right. You know, like the feeling in that one where it's all about how much she is trying so, like, she connects so hard with Bob on this thing, and like they do this beautiful thing about like how she has this stomach issue for like 30 minutes. The entire episode is about her trying to poop. And I'm just sitting there the whole time thinking, man, this is some of the best family comedy I've watched in a while.
Well, first of all, Bob's Burgers definitely gets the trophy for that, for being a series. A lot of these sitcoms that you watch you don't believe that the family actually loves each other because of how at odds they are throughout
Yeah.
every, like, 22 minutes is the standard length of an episode of television these days. So for 20 minutes of that, these people like want to kill each other.
Right.
And then 1 minute they love each other, and then 1 minute is opening and closing credits. So it's hard to watch that. But Bob's Burgers, I believe that all of them love each other and that they are a loving, supportive family all the time. Like, and yes, they mess with each other, but you can tell that the messing with each other comes from a place of love.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not like,
and even those times when they feel like they need space from each other, like it's totally relatable because like I love my mom, but like I need some space. I love my brother, but I don't need to be up in his biz all the time. You know what I mean? Like and so when they do toy with that idea of the because that's where that comes from, right? Is it comes from this place of truth of like we all get sick of our family sometimes, but that can't be constant, right?
that can't be the baseline. If
Right.
that's the baseline, you move away.
Right.
You set off on your own path. Maybe you distance each other and you only see each other on the holidays, right?
Yeah.
The way that so many families exist.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm missing right now, man. Is like a really good new sitcom to really kind of sink my teeth into, and it sucks that like we don't have much this year. I mean, I mean, part of it because of COVID, part of it because the late season ads were not great this year. You know, there's just it's been hard for television to get its feet under it this year for a lot of reasons.
Did you do Perfect Harmony on NBC? Did you watch that
Oh,
at all?
The
church
choir
film?
one with
Yeah, Bradley
with
Whitford and Anna
Bradley
Camp.
Whitford there. I watched the first couple of episodes and enjoyed it, but didn't go back to it, so that says something.
I've
But
watched through the whole series 3 times.
yeah.
I
Are they getting
recommend
another
that
season?
one if you're no, it's canceled.
Yeah.
Which is, and that's the issue. Like that show was really good, and they did this good building up of characters, and I think that it had a place to go, and it bums me out that it doesn't get one. Ditto a show like Sunnyside, which was canceled after 4 episodes, but then we're still going to show a new episode every week on Hulu. Like we're going to drop a new episode on Hulu every week when it would be new regular. And Sunnyside was a really good series as well.
That was the Cal Penn one, right? Where
that was
he
the Cal
plays
Penn one.
the politician. Yeah, really, really enjoyed that, and honestly didn't realize Hulu had picked up the rest of the season. So I'm actually excited to hear about that. That's cool.
So those are ones that, like, if you didn't see the whole thing, going back to them, that might be something for you if you're looking for other kind of wholesome sitcoms. The big issue, and I noticed this with not Growing Up Fisher, the one that J.K. Simmons played a blind man. Do you remember this series?
No, I don't remember this at all. This is new to me.
Probably 2011 again. I believe it was after the cruise days. And he played a blind man who was like, him and his wife had gotten a divorce, and it was showing how the kids were dealing with it, and very much they still loved each other. It was a very heartwarming series. And as soon as we saw that, the whole family was like, so we're getting 1 season of this. Because these are not the shows that last.
Yeah.
And that's the case for something like a Perfect Harmony or a Sunnyside. People would rather escape to those series where it seems like Raymond wants to kill his mother every week, even though everybody loves Raymond.
Murder for Life is available somewhere, right? Like I'm even willing to go back to something that had some good stuff because like the other day we were trying to do that even. The problem with that is like the first thing we hit on was that 70s show. And I make no apologies for the fact that I just can't do that show anymore, which sucks because there's a lot of really good stuff on that show, but Danny Masterson's never going to get my money ever again. Like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of shit we were running into by going back to the old stuff. I was fucking dying because like I've really been itching to do like the Drew Carey show, but anything season 2 and on is just not available anywhere because they just basically, because they use so much licensed music, they were like it'd be impossible to work out how to fucking figure that out.
If you have a Laugh Network, LAFF, occasionally they show blocks of it. That's my recommendation to you, is to see if you have it'd be like a 0.3 or a 0.4 channel on over-the-air broadcast. that
Interesting.
just shows like old comedies. That's
I
where
wonder
I
if it's available on
rewatched.
any of the
Yeah,
I wonder if it's available on any of the free TV Vizio stuff. They have a whole bunch of like channels like that too.
like that's where I was seeing that for when Roseanne was rightfully in the crosshairs for the
Mhm.
things that Roseanne Barr did. They were still showing Roseanne. Ditto like Empty Nest. I rewatched the entire series of Empty Nest on Laugh, and I'm like, people don't know this show existed. And Sophia is just in it from Golden Girls.
Yeah. We should pour one out for our house, the man himself, Wilford Brimley this week.
Yeah, that was
Just yeah, man. Yeah, man, lost a lost a fantastic character actor. I think I'm gonna go back and watch The Thing this month because of it. I watch it every year for my birthday slash Halloween because I just love that movie. But I might watch it early this year because of the loss. It's a shame.
I'm gonna watch the episode where Kramer tries to cancel his mail, season 9, episode 5 of Seinfeld, where he plays the postmaster general.
Nice,
That's
fantastic.
that's gonna be the way that I honor him. That may be In and Out, because he has a very nice little like arc in and Out.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's good. Look at this. This is fun stuff that we're talking about. I enjoy it. And speaking of Watchmen, I feel I have to mention that the new Transformers series came out on Netflix.
Yeah, the like 3 movie series that they're doing.
So the name of the series is War for Cybertron Trilogy,
Right.
which is that's a mouthful, right?
Yeah.
And
It's anime. I'm willing to allow it to be a...
it's weird that it's called anime because it's like CG. It's actually the CAD models that were used to design the toys, given life. So
That's
it's
amazing.
very good. I sat in on an episode of Board with Friends because they needed a like Mario. I'll call myself the Mario of that because they had the Luigi in Zack.
Dyer's always it's always the Luigi. I was just gonna say it.
and then Sean is the Toad who like is kind of casual and knew some things about it. So they needed that person who had a foot in both camps. They needed the guy with average stats regarding Transformers.
Nice.
And it's 6 episodes. It's not specifically a movie, but they are sort of 6-episode miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel a lot of that same issue that you touched upon, where it's people trying to emulate something that they enjoyed before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real issue with what we're seeing in entertainment these days.
Yeah, it's weird because like we learned for a while that going back to the well can work as long as you play your cards right? Like don't just do what was done before, build on it. Build on that world and fans, build it and they will come, right? Like that's the whole concept that we kind of I thought all agreed upon, but then it seems like as usual like the people in the rooms with the money didn't figure that shit out, so they just want people to just start producing shit as it once was, and it's like that's not going to work, especially now, guys. Like look at the world we are in and tell me that what we need right now is just Transformers Redux. No. Meanwhile, there's some actually really badass like Voltron shit going on Netflix. Like, look at that. Look at what they did.
Yeah, and I think that's the big issue is that you look at something like Voltron that was, at the end of the day, a toy commercial, and what they did with that series, and Transformer fans got excited that that's what was going to happen with Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
And oddly, I feel like they didn't go either way. They too were Mario, where they stayed true to the stuff that you know before. The entire opening of the first episode is a like 1-for-1 recreation of the first episode of Transformers More Than Meets the Eye from 1984.
Yeah.
Like it's Wheeljack and Bumblebee running away from Seekers.
Oh man.
It's like, oh my god, like it hit me right in the heart. Like, oh, this is cool. But then as it goes on, it always plays it safe instead of making those decisions that, would set it apart as its own new unique thing.
Right.
But like I don't want to like do much because we talked for an hour and a half about it on an episode. So please seek out that episode of Board with Friends. Sejohn, after you watch it, I would love to hear your thoughts on it because I don't think, have you ever owned a Transformers figure? That's a
I've
question I'm gonna ask you.
the closest I have ever come to a fucking Transformers figure that I have owned was like those McDonald's Happy Meal toys that turned into other things. Like this hamburger is also a fucking like buggy, like Dune buggy or some shit or whatever. Like that's the closest I ever got to it. So, or this fry is also a hearse. I don't know. But
They
we'll
became robots. They
this
really tried to do that, and then they became dinosaurs.
yeah, yeah.
I wish that they had things that like turned into macabre things. Like this burger is a gun. This shake is a surface-to-air missile, and the fries as a hearse. I really like that. And in the back is a little dead fry guy figure, like. Because we're bringing back McDonald Land, too. I'm surprised that McDonald Land hasn't seen a resurgence in the wake of everything. At least that weird moon guy. I hate that moon guy. With the sunglasses, and he's a crescent moon. I hate him. Like McCool. Like, that's his name.
Yeah, McCool has a huge cult following right now because there's a Five Nights at Freddy's knockoff game that is McCool based, and that's pretty rad. So he's getting his due. I'll just put that out
Good.
there.
I'm glad that McCool is getting his due. He terrifies me. He terrified me as a youngin'. He terrifies me as a 34-in. Like,
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the whole basis for the fandom for the games. Yeah.
it checks out. Nice job, guys. But yeah,
and
so
that's what I've been up
I'd
to.
love if you checked it out and we could have a discussion. And if it works for you, as someone who doesn't really have, I mean, I imagine you saw the Michael Bay movies because we all kind of saw the Michael Bay movies, whether we came there as Transformers fans or Armageddon fans. I feel like those are the two camps.
I had that weird journey with the Michael Bay movies where I was going because I was interested in the first one. Hasbro, I'm a Rhode Island boy born and raised, so Hasbro was like, we're doing this thing and I want to support that shit. So like was really kind of like willing to give the first one a go, and it was quite enjoyable. Lost me once they started doing like fucking swanger balls, like for the was
Nobody
that 2 or
liked
3?
Revenge of the Fallen,
Yeah,
which is the second film.
Yeah, so that kind of lost me. Then I slowly started to come back, and then once you lost Shia LaBeouf, I was like, I don't know if I can be on board for this anymore. But then I came back with Bumblebee, so like I've been all over the fucking map on that series, on the movie series, I should say. As far as the cartoons and toys and stuff go, like part of the reason that I didn't do Transformers growing up is, I don't like to play the I was a poor child card often, but like we didn't really do like name brand toys like that too often. I think the only real name brand toy that like I fell in love with when I was a kid was like an Oscar the Grouch toy that like wheeled around in his garbage can. Like, you know what I mean? Like that. Like we didn't really go in for a lot of that shit. Like we didn't have GI Joes in our house or anything like that.
That said, I know you owned at least a shipwreck figure from GI Joe because it was a stage management gift for Shock and Awe, whatever the name of that show was.
Yeah, fucking shit happens, right?
Yeah.
Or stuff happens, I mean. Which we should talk about someday because I found the Broadway show that he stole beat for beat from to make that show, by the way. But we'll that might even have to be an off-mic conversation.
That sounds like a fun time for us to have. I ran away from that show. I had nothing to do with it except for the fact that I was present when the G.I. Joe figures were purchased as the gift for the management staff.
Yeah, and everybody wanted to give me that one.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, he got a parrot and a beard. It's C.J. Sarowick.
Yeah, but seriously, the only on-mic thing I think I will actually say about that is go check out Tim Robbins' Embedded. I own a copy of it. It was a 3-night only event. It is his anti-Bush, anti-Iraq war play that he put on. Tim Robbins directed, and stars in, as well as like a whole bunch of other really good Broadway actors. Phenomenal show, and it is really good. And if you watch it, then you've also seen the 2007 URI play Stuff Happens.
Yeah.
If you watch Embedded, you've seen Stuff Happens. Not because it's the same script, mind you, because the Stuff Happens script is a phenomenal piece of like researched like stage writing. We didn't do that. We didn't really follow the script for that show.
Again, ran away from it. I
Uh-huh.
saw what was happening there, and I'm like, this is the semester I take all gen eds, and it was
I'm
fun.
pretty
That was
sure
a
that's the
fun
show that Renee and
semester.
I burned our scripts for outside. We literally lit them on fire and danced around them when we were done. Um,
A lot of
but anyway,
fires were set in that back alley. A lot of fires. We don't
I
need to go
forgot about
deeper into
the
that, though.
dumpster fire. Shit, the dumpster's on fire. Oh man. Oh god. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, man. So but that's what I've been up to this week is just kind of starting to dive into some new stuff. Oh, just because we talked about it last week with DC Universe probably disappearing, I decided to try and kind of consume as much off of the app that I don't know where it's going to go later. So mainly the comics because I don't know what they're going to do with that side of the whole thing, right? And so I read up a whole bunch of like Justice League Dark with like Wonder Woman at the helm. Didn't even realize that it happened. A whole lot of John Constantine Hellblazer. So for those keeping score, not the original Hellblazer series, but John Constantine Hellblazer was the 2011 revamp or 2015 revamp of that series, and it goes hard from the get go. So I'm very much enjoying that. A couple of other things here and there, but poking into like some old books that I never got the chance to read, Red Hood and the Outlaws and stuff like that. Because like I said, I don't know what's going to happen to the comic side of that app once everything kind of falls apart over the next year.
I honestly feel like it's going to remain comic only. If I had to guess, and this is all just conjecture, the Borg cube that is HBO Max will take over and assimilate everything that is visual. That's not wrong. Everything that is moving pictures.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. And I kind of hope that they do because we've talked about how much HBO Max is better at curating and presenting that stuff. The only thing is, if that's the case, DC Universe as an app needs to open up its doors a little bit more to the amount of stuff it has on there as far as comics goes. Because, for instance, the fact that they don't have more Vertigo based stuff on there, like for instance, like Hellblazer, I can't get original Hellblazer on that app. I can only get the John Constantine Hellblazer and the Constantine series that came out within the last like 10 years. They don't have any of the old Vertigo stuff. The fact that I talked about Transmetropolitan last week and that is a Vertigo line, like start to finish, why is that not available on the app, right? Like I don't think that they'd be losing any money by having that on there, but I think it's legit because they're trying to curate age restrictions. I think
mhm.
is a huge part of it, but they need to get over that. Like they need to figure out a way around that if they want to keep me on DC Universe and only be comics based.
Right. But the reason I say that is that Marvel has their comics based subscription program. So I think it could work. I think that there's room for both of them in the world. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that you're ever going to have all the comics are here at this one app. Sorry, Comixology. Like, you can sell me licenses to them, but I'm never going to have a subscription service for both Marvel and DC that's like one payment out each
Yeah.
month. Uh, but I feel they'd be foolish to get rid of the ability to read comics based on a subscription series, which is what Marvel already does.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, for
you
sure.
don't want to, shore up your arsenal. You want to make sure that you have as many weapons at the ready as possible in
Yeah.
something like that, especially with what's going on. But with the fact that Harley Quinn dropped on HBO Max on Friday, that just feels like one more foot out the door for the
Uh-huh.
DC Universe app in terms of moving pictures. I honestly don't know what else to call it.
No, yeah, and, just to bitch just a little bit more about the DC Universe app, like they've got to get better at the curation on the comic side too, because like the fact that there's a 5 issue arc of Wonder Woman and Justice League Dark that is about basically Hecate basically destroying magic, like big hitting the reset button on magic in the entire DC universe,
House of
and it's
M.
a
It sounds like House
uh,
of M.
and it's a phenomenal 5 issue series. But if you go onto the DC Universe app, it will only show issues 1 and then 4 and 5 because they were spread out amongst like it was first a Wonder Woman issue, then a Justice League Dark issue, then a crossover issue, then another Wonder Woman, and then another crossover. And they only show the 2 crossovers and the first Wonder Woman if you go to that collection. It's not that the other ones aren't available on the app; they are. You just got to go looking for them, as opposed to it being under the headline of this collection of the Witching Hour is the name of it. And it's just like, what? Why aren't all 5 issues here? Why? Because I read the first one and then I read what I thought was the second one, and I was like, I feel like I'm missing a lot of what's going on. Like, suddenly Deadman's here, and he was not here 2 seconds ago, and I need me some good fucking Boston Brand. So, like, I had to go looking into it, and I was like, okay, there's 2 more issues that are also, they're available in when you buy the trade. It's all together. So why the fuck did they not do that on the app? Like, what are you doing, DC?
Yeah, that is, as much as I want to like point at DC and laugh, haha, like Nelson Muntz. That is a huge issue that comics had, that I will never understand. I point a finger at Civil War and Marvel, and just the fact that in order to read the entire Civil War story, you had to have like 13 separate solo issues
Yeah.
a month in order to get everything that was going on.
And then they do the whole war journal thing with Punisher, and like yeah, man, like there's a ton of like that has definitely been something in the DNA of comics forever. Like, hey, we want you to read more than just the Wonder Woman line, so we're also going to cross over. So make sure you're also buying Justice League Dark for the next 2 months. Like, I get that, but the thing is with the online service, they have the ability to make that correction. In that, when I click on the Witching Hour collection, show me everything in the Witching Hour. When I go to the Marvel Civil War collection, I expect there to be at least all the key parts to the Civil War story available to me. I don't feel like I should read the first issue and then read like issue 6 in that series and be like, what the fuck? Where are the other 4 issues? Like that shouldn't happen.
And you certainly shouldn't be steered towards the
Right.
6th issue in the series. It
Right.
should do everything that it can to say, go read this. I mean, I go back to, you want to know the reason why I read the Infinity Gauntlet saga? I know I've told this story before, but it has to do with Sleepwalker.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was just because you wanted more Sleepwalker.
No,
because there was
it's because issue 7 of Sleepwalker, the use of the gauntlet by Thanos affected Earth, and Sleepwalker had to deal with it. And they're like, editor's note, if you want to know what happened, go read this miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the comic shop, and it was available for $30, all 6 issues. And I bought them, and I read them, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then, like, lo and behold, 20 years later, that's the movie that we got. But I would have never done that. Like, I miss the editor's note. The editor's note was my favorite thing about old comics, being like, if you're completely lost, go spend money on this.
Yeah, I will say Deadpool, at least for a time while I was like invested in still buying issue by issue comics, Deadpool was still doing that strong and hard. But that is wrapped up in him as the narrator of those books. It makes it very easy for him to be like, hey kids, like, just as an aside, like, I'm gonna make this meta joke about how if you want to know more about what's going on, go read this thing. And it's like, as meta of a joke as that is, I kind of needed that info. Thanks, Deadpool. Like,
yeah, and I think where that really like sort of went by the wayside, as much as I reference a 90s comic, the reason why they did that is that Sleepwalker was so far removed from the Infinity Gauntlet saga that they wanted to try to move the Infinity Gauntlet saga. If you were a kid who was only reading the Sleepwalker books, hi, Devon Decker, how you doing? And so it was marketing, but then there also became that thing where comics became highly collectible in the 90s. Mm-hmm. Like, it's when we saw that, like, there's value in these funny books, because most kids were buying them and throwing them away. But lo and behold, no, you probably shouldn't have been doing that. You were sitting on gold. It's where we get things like The Death and Return of Superman sold in a black bag. And it's actually
Death in the Family being like, becoming one of the most expensive comics in the world to get a hold of.
Yeah. It's a copy of the sealed in black bag is less expensive than one that's opened and in good condition. That was crazy, because I bought a copy of it because I'm like, well, I want to get that as a gift for somebody. Is that really the price for like what feels like a huge cultural touchstone? And he's like, yeah, they'll give these away, but if you have one like from the time that was open and like immaculately kept, that's the one that people will pay a lot of money for. And I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. It's weird. It's weird. They became weird. But my point is that when they became collectible items, it felt like they moved away from that because
Yeah.
they didn't want to alienate people by saying, if you're lost, go read this, and then it would be impossible to find that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like once you start putting limited runs of shit out, you can't kind of point your whole audience at it. That's kind of it's like a fucking Willy Wonka golden ticket-esque like riot at the comic shop. Yeah, man. Comics has always been a weird industry. We've talked about this so many times on here. Part of the other big thing going on with the digital comic stuff for me is like they'd got to get their act together on that, DC specifically, because if there's this move with what's the comic shop in NY there?
Midtown.
Midtown.
Comics?
If they're gonna make this move with Midtown for that to be their primary source of publishing and selling, like they need to make more stuff digitally available and easier to navigate because like that's the only way that they're gonna keep fans. Because I mean, at this point, like I think about like the comic shop that I used to go to in Toledo is not gonna sell DC Comics anymore. And if they're not selling DC Comics without an app that I can easily get through, I ain't going to go out of my way to find DC Comics. Like, I'm not going to Amazon to like order shit from Midtown. That ain't going to happen. Yeah, man.
Yeah, and it's certainly. I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but we talked about 2011 being a weird time for DC Comics.
Yeah.
And this might just be my interpretation of things, but they haven't really bounced back from that.
Yeah. Well, like let's ignite the old feud here. It was them trying to react to Marvel blowing the fuck up with the movies and DC not knowing what to do because like they didn't want to look like they were just doing what Marvel was doing. They also wanted to get in on it quick because God, at the time we didn't know it was going to be a 20-year like love affair with comics. You know what I mean? With comic book movies, like the last time we had a comic book movie boom, it's flared up for like a hot second in the early 2000s and then disappeared again, right? So like DC was just trying to they were scrambling to figure out like do we revamp the comics? If we revamp the comics, do we try and make them more in line with the movie universe? Are we going to bother with the movie universe? Does the movie universe dictate anything about the comics? Or like it just became this whole fucking hullabaloo that like you're right, I don't think they've ever recovered from, and I think it's because they're still trying to figure that shit out. They're still in the process of trying to figure out what's more important to us: the movie dollars, the book dollars. I mean, the books don't really generate dollars, so like really obviously it's the movie dollars, but also the movies aren't doing so hot for us half the time, so like what the hell are we doing?
You are not wrong, but that's just the thing is I'm not super upset that I'm not going to get to read DC Comics because when I did read a DC comic, it was because it was an impulse buy. Yeah. I'd go in to pick something up that I actually cared about, and I'd be like, oh, look at that. New Batman. And there's a faceless Joker on the cover. I'll check it out. Also, and this is a sad truth that I'm about to share here on the Say Report. A lot of my comic buying totally was impulse purchases at Toys R Us because they had that comic rack at the front of the store where the line formed, and I'm like, oh, Sonic and Mega Man are meeting each other. I want to read that.
Yeah. Betty and Veronica are crossing over with Harley Quinn. Like, yes, hell yes, I'll read that shit. But like,
Archie
I wouldn't have gone looking for it. Yeah, man. I know it's again. I think it comes down to the fact that the comics industry has always had just weirdness built into its DNA as far as the actual consumer's marketing side of it goes. Like the business side, the capitalist side of comics has always been fucking weird. A lot of people remember that their first comics they ever read were fucking Sunday comics, and those don't exist anymore. You don't get Spider-Man in the Sunday funnies anymore. You know what I mean? Like that's
no one gets newspapers. I'm sure they still exist.
No, but that's exactly it though, right? Is even if they do exist, nobody's getting them. Like,
yeah, I mean, like 9 Chickweed Lane. Do you know anything about 9 Chickweed Lane?
That's a question. Thing. I feel like you're just making up words.
Yeah, right. That's what it sounds like. I follow someone on Twitter. I know who.
Isn't that where the Munsters lived? Like, what?
No, they lived at 1313 Mockingbird Lane. Oh, look at that! Monster knowledge. Dave Willis, who was the web comic artist behind Short Pact, and Joyce and Walkie, like he did a bunch of web comics during the like real web comic time. I still follow him on Twitter from that. Like we've met, and it's that, and he's kept me connected to the Transformers universe. Whenever Zach like is busy with other stuff, like I still have Dave Willis to sort of be my Sherpa through the insanity that is Transformers. And because he is a comic artist, he will often share comics, and he has sort of kept me connected to 9 Chickweed Lane, which is basically just two 30-somethings who are married and fucking all the time. That's the easiest way to describe this.
So far, sounds like a very happy comic. Yeah.
They just had kids. They just had premature twins that were born like 3 months early, and those twins are just like not there. Like the comic has just continued the way it has, and every so often you'll see the twins show up. But I think of like that is something that is syndicated in newspapers, that all the old comics that you used to get in newspapers now have websites where you can read them, usually the day of, or like you're a day behind.
I mean, even the bigwigs do. Like fucking Gary Larson started up Farsight again,
Farsight
and
does it.
Yeah, Brooke Breathed. How do you say his last name? I've never said it out loud before. Idea. But the Bloom County Opus comics are huge online.
Doonesbury is up there. Like you can go read them very much like web comics. They were smart to be like, well, let's adapt this to this thing that is in a dying industry. Yeah. And 9 Chickweed Lane is one that I kind of read, because occasionally I'll see one in my Twitter feed and I'll go to it, and it will be so off the wall that I will go back to try to get some like grasp on what is happening. Like last week's arc, I can't believe I'm sharing this here. I didn't think this would ever come out of my mouth, was that they met when they were younger. And like they knew that, like they went to the same school, and the guy saw her once at a ballet class, and like he basically, it's like, I wanted to fuck you the first time I saw you. And she's like, imagine if we had. And like it was all these like them as the younger selves talking it through, and then as their normal selves, and then older, as if the whole cycle of their lives will always be considering, what if we had fucked earlier than we fucked?
Oh man.
And like that's, I have to imagine that that's still published like alongside Rex Morgan MD and Mary Worth and Kathy going ack. Like I don't know.
The big thing, the big one that surprised me over the last couple of months is Calvin and Hobbes collections started just showing up on Amazon Prime on the Kindle books, which, like, considering how litigious and like close to the vest that dude plays all of his shit with Calvin and Hobbes, it was so rad to see that I could actually read the old collections up on Amazon Prime. You know, like they're out there. That stuff is getting out there, and like. Yeah, man, I like DC needs to get on fucking board with that. I feel like Marvel is probably, I don't want to act like Marvel is like doing fine and swimming pretty and all this shit. I'm sure that they are also like shitting themselves on a daily basis. Like, what do we do next to make sure we don't all go out of business tomorrow? But they at least have a plan in place that they can depend on today. Whether or not they can depend on it tomorrow is a different question. Whereas, like, I feel like even DC today is just like, we don't know what we're doing. We're already on fire. What are we doing?
I feel like that's DC's like modus operandi. Like, they're so stuck in what the comics game used to be when they had the Batman series in the 1960s, that they don't know how to adapt. It's very strange. But while we're talking about collector culture, I'd like to talk about a new issue that I have been experiencing as someone who tries to collect things.
Yeah, man.
Specifically in the world as it is now, because before you used to go to like brick and mortar stores and hopefully what you were looking for was in stock. But now we have the internet,
I loved
which
these cautionary tales of modern day nerddom that you get into. I just have to say that.
oh
Yeah,
okay.
so the internet. Let's get
So
into it.
now we have the internet. Now, a big thing about San Diego Comic Con, which we didn't really talk about because it was a con at home and it didn't feel as special as it usually does. Um, but
Oh man, I've only seen bits and pieces.
yeah,
Like I couldn't tell you one thing that came out of it that I'm excited about. Not because there wasn't, but I just haven't heard of it yet.
right. Really, the only thing that I've heard any tell from are the collectibles companies like Hasbro talking about Hasbro. I don't know how I said Hasbro as if it were a town in Massachusetts, but Hasbro, they did a whole presentation talking about the exclusives that would have been on sale at Comic Con, and they're going to be releasing them to their website in September so that you can pre-order them and do that whole issue. They also did a thing. They partnered with Walmart for special pre-sales of con exclusives, and that's where this story is going to start. And that's the fact that they said it's going to be available at this time at Walmart.com. They ended up going on sales 3 hours early, so that by the time that people got there, everything was already sold out. And that has sort of just progressed through the entire internet, and it came to a head for me today. NECA, who holds the license for collectible Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys, their San Diego Comic-Con and what would have been a New York Comic-Con exclusive was the Coming Out of Their Shells tour. They didn't own the trademark to that, so they called it the Musical Mutagen tour. But they were in the costumes with like the high top sneakers, and they looked atrocious. It really looked like they took the terrible costumes that those four poor guys wore on stage and recreated them in toy form.
Dude, like hot tangent for just a quick second.
Go for it.
The way that we used to do that shit is hilarious. I didn't know that there was a Mario on Ice show, and came across it on like a YouTube like fucking what's the word I'm looking for, like montage video, like 3 hour long montage video of just like Nintendo media, like, so you know, like the Mario All-Stars commercials from like the early 90s, or like the interviews that they would do when the Super Nintendo was coming out to talk about the new technology of the Super Nintendo and how the cartridge wasn't going to be inside the machine but on top of the machine, like that kind of weird shit, right? One of the things that was in there was a news report about Mario on Ice with like a 2-minute clip from it that was fucking hilarious. The guy that plays Bowser, or King Koopa at the time, was sitting on top of this giant like painted up like scooch box. What is it, like that
Scooch box worked. I knew exactly what you meant.
It looks like a brick, right? Like it's painted up to look like one of the brick boxes, and then there's two Goombas, quote unquote, behind him, like pushing him around the ice as he sings. It's just the kind of shit that we allowed to happen in like the early 90s, like late 80s for selling kids toys. I kind of miss, like, I really miss, like, I have vivid memories of going to like Sesame Street, like the like show at the what is the Dunk now, I forget, the Providence Performing,
the Civic Center, Providence Center,
yeah.
PCC.
Yeah. Like I remember going and seeing that sort of shit, and like really all I hear about anymore is like Disney on Ice, which is still rad and brings a tear to my eye that it still exists, but like we need more of that silly ass shit. Where's like my Crash Bandicoot on Ice? Like I want that, right? Like
yeah, you're not wrong. It was an insane thing. And if you have never seen Coming Out of Their Shells and you're a listener of the show, first of all, that get at me at the Zero Report. I'd like to talk to you about how you've missed this, because we dig into everything, and it's crazy, and it's excellent. Like the story is actually really good. At least the music is exceptional. I mean, Pizza Power is a for real banger that I will give all the. There's a reason why these turtles are announced, and I'm like, I need to get this. Right. I haven't been collecting the NECA stuff, but I have such a weird connection to this that started with getting a cassette from Pizza Hut in 1993. Oh, no. Like it's just this thing. So like it fed on my nostalgia and all of this, and NECA was unable to sell it on their website in the U.S. They could sell it internationally, but in the U.S. they had partnered with Target for any sort of cartoon-based Ninja Turtles product Like just
Weird, but
yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah. Movie is with Walmart, cartoon is with Target, and
Yeah.
for some reason this fell in with the cartoon licensing. My guess is because of the rock and roll turtles that existed in the old Playmates line.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there was a connection between creators or something along the line too, like whoever the lead creator on the show, not the on the cartoon show, probably was also like a consultant or something, and that leads to it falling under that wheelhouse in the business scheme and
Yeah, oh
shit.
my god. If we want to
Yeah,
talk about creators' rights in the early 90s for comics, like that could fill another whole episode of the Say Report. And I would love to do that sometime because it blew my mind once I fell down that rabbit hole. But so it's Target that has to do it. So they're like, it will be in Target stores on the 24th of July and available on the website. Go to the website, sold out. We'll let you know when it's back in stock. I get a thing that is back in stock. I go, sold out. Impossible to get it. And what I'm seeing is that all of these things where it's like, go and pre-order it, and you can get it, as opposed to going to San Diego Comic-Con where you stand in a line for hours like you're going to go on Splash Mountain, but really what you're going to do is fork over hundreds of dollars for collectibles.
right,
And
right.
at an event that you already had to pay money to get into. I mean, like, there's a reason why conventions have become that type of convention have lost their appeal to me because I'm basically paying to go to a flea market. And I'm paying a premium to go to a flea
You're
market.
not wrong, man. Like, yeah, you're paying a fucking pretty penny to go in and buy up somebody else's junk that they just tossed out.
Yeah. So, but it's been this really interesting thing where, like, we're announcing these pre-orders and that, and it came to a head because one of the guys from NECA did an interview about it and said that you just can't go online and sell pre-orders for a set amount of time and then fulfill those pre-orders. Like, that doesn't work. And is like, okay. And he also said, and it's impossible to have everything on the shelf at a street date. And that blew my mind because comic books, they release on Wednesday, and you know in advance when your books are coming out. Movies, video games, music. Every other industry has figured it out, but this toy guy saying that it's impossible to do that. Like, that's the reason why you set a street date. Is so, like, that's the date when we know it can be available to everybody.
Well, the issue that he's having is like him and the people in his industry don't understand what a fucking street date means because they'll go and they'll set a street date, but then they'll let you do things like buy it here early, buy it there early, pre-order on this site, do this shit. Like and then they're like, "Oh, we don't actually have enough stock to fulfill all of these promises we made." Right? And yeah, man, it's definitely a new problem because like the big thing back in the 90s is you were over making what you had and then just pitching it like fucking crazy at kids hoping they'd buy it because like can you imagine this shit happening with like Cabbage Patch Kids? Do you imagine like there were already people getting stomped like in toy stores for Cabbage Patch Kids, but if there had been a shortage on them, that's
There
ridiculous,
was a
right?
shortage on them. That's why
Well,
people were
right.
getting stomped. But,
Right.
like, imagine if you were told you can get it here and you don't need to go out. All you need to
Mhm.
do is sign up, give us your credit card information, and we will ship it to you.
Yeah.
And it's not available. Like, it's just so disheartening because it's
Yeah.
why are you saying that? And also, he says, and when we announce that it's in Target stores on the 24th, you can't go to Target and expect for it to be there. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, but I can because you told us it should be there. Like that. And then he ended this interview that I watched by saying, and also beginning on the 31st of July through to the 5th of August, we're going to have pre-orders of the Toka and Raza 2-pack. They'll be open for that week, and everyone that's ordered will be produced. So
Was that
why
like
did
sarcasm?
No, it's the truth. It's like, why did you spend 15 minutes of this interview telling us it's impossible when that was what you were coming out to sell?
It almost feels like that's like there should be like a wink in the middle of that. Also, by the way, in case you fuckers want in on this, like that is the most like insulting thing to be like, oh, this system is fucking broken. Hey, by the way, give us some more money in the middle of this system. Like no, what are you doing?
Yeah. So that's it. And it came to a head for me today, though, because, like, after not being able to get the musical Turtles, after not being able to get, like, certain Transformer figures that didn't go up for pre-order until Friday when the series, like, released on Netflix, Analog, they're an electronics company. They make FPGA consoles using original parts in that. They've released an NES, a Super Nintendo, and Genesis. And today, August 3rd, when this podcast is being recorded and released, they opened up pre-orders for their newest system, which is the Analog Pocket, and it's a Game Boy. And
I thought you were going to say Sega Dreamcast, and I got my hopes up.
yeah,
but anyway.
no. Sega Dreamcast, so everything can play Sega Dreamcast. I'm playing Sega Dreamcast on this glass right now. Sonic Adventure. It's still good. Still a good game. Yeah, so... And I got on, right? They opened at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and I was there right at 11. I added everything to the cart. I went to check out because everyone else in the world is trying to do it. It's moving very slowly. I get a cost for shipping, which Analog, notoriously, their products sell out, and the shipping is like 5 times more than you're going to spend anywhere else. I don't understand it. It's not like it comes in any sort of special box. I don't feel like it's protected any more than anything else that I purchase.
That shouldn't be allowed, man. If they're not using some special form of shipping it to you, then that is not going towards shipping. Yeah. That is going into somebody's pocket. And fuck that.
It's just very strange that the whole shipping thing. Because after it comes through, $21 to ship. And I'm like, I don't understand, but I'm still going to do it because notoriously, if you don't get their stuff when it is available, it sells out, and then you can only find it on like aftermarket sites with like a 6 times markup.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm gonna do it. Whatever. It tells me how much it is to ship. I blanch a little. I clutch my pearls, and then I go check out, and it says that everything that's in my cart is now sold out.
Jesus, that's not how a cart works. Like, that's not how digital carts are supposed to work. Legitimately, you putting that item in your cart is supposed to take away from the inventory that they have in stock so that they cannot do that to you. Like, that is, like, straight up... In some countries, that is, like, hard law.
Yeah, it was very, very strange to see it. And it just... And I'm not, like, going to be this person who's like, I'm never going to do it again. But the hindsight of the situation is... Well, you know, the reason I was getting this was only because I knew it would be hard to get. So, like, maybe that's not a reason to purchase things. It was sort of a clarity, epiphany moment for me. Where, like, I mean, I wanted it because it would be very cool. It has a dock system, so you can hook it up to HD TVs and monitors and play that. Like, it's very cool. But
consider that it's forcing you as the fan, like not consumer Devon, fan Devon, to actually like rethink and reshape, you know, your whole am I a fan, am I not a fan, like concept in your mind, right? Like like I love the Super Nintendo. And I was all about like the idea of like a Super Nintendo system coming out with a bunch of preloaded games and stuff on it. And then like they had to make some hard calls about what that system was going to look like, and it doesn't have everything that I want. And I had to sit there and be like, how big of a fan am I? And like that's a shitty conversation to have with yourself, right? Like if I'm almost there, like bring me in. Like you do everything you can to keep me on your side of the fence, and like that sucks. That it's basically not capable of doing that. It's doing quite the opposite. It's turning a lot of people off to the whole fandom aspect of this thing, and that sucks because that's not great for the artist or for the audience.
Yeah, it was a real weird like punch in the gut for me to be like, you know what? Like, thank you. I feel like I'm free. I feel like the earmuff slipped off and I wasn't listening to the Pied Piper's song anymore, so I don't need to march in this like fake consumer, you know, driven thing. Like, I mean, to completely unrelated, but exclusive covers for comic books. And like
not completely unrelated.
Yeah, but it's just one of those things where we're telling you that it's going to be valuable down the line. And then it turns out that the standard cover becomes more valuable because, big air quotes here, filthy casuals bought that one and then just tossed it. So instead of there being 500 copies of that on the aftermarket, the 10 people who like were there too late at the comic book shop to get the exclusive cover, who bought that and still, bagged it and boarded it and put it aside to see what would happen, they're the ones who get rewarded when you are assured by the comic book company that this is the one that's going to be worth the money.
This is the special one.
This is the special one.
Except it's not special, right? Yeah, man. I
mean, I see that all the time with like signed things. If things that are unsigned are worth more often because, this book was released and you got a signed copy if you ordered it. And it's like, well, that's nice, but if everything is signed, if everything is special, then nothing is special. That same argument.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
a
weird.
little offshoot of this collector thing that we should probably mention just because it's more funny than anything else. Did you hear about the Topps not debacle, but like they put out a Dr. Fauci card for his toss out for his at the Nationals game, and it became their fastest selling card in like Topps history.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Like 1.4 million people. I might even have that decimal in the wrong place, but like just like as soon as they announced that they were putting it out, they got a bunch of orders for it, and it was one of the fastest selling like baseball cards ever. And it was him just doing the terrible amazing toss out.
All right, like just straight up, right? Like related to that. If you're going to throw a pitch out, right? Let's say tomorrow you're going to call, Sejohn, will you come throw out the first pitch at the, Salt Lake City Shakers game? Would you practice?
I mean, yeah, a couple, and I wouldn't throw that hard. I would just do a fucking lob. Like, you're not pitching to a baseball. You're not pitching to a batter. I mean, like, just fucking lob it to the catcher. It's not that hard. Like, people play catch all the time, right? Like,
get it over the plate. That's all I'd really like to see. I think about
the thing
that.
that I will say about that though is like, I don't need my top CDC scientist to be the guy that can also pitch a fastball.
And that's very true. That's true. I just feel like. And I know that he's very busy, especially with everything that's going on. But maybe, like, at lunchtime, you go out on the lawn and you toss it around a little bit.
Hell, 30 minutes before the game starts, before they start letting the fucking people into the stadium, like, you figure he could show up a little early and toss the ball around
be in the bullpen, like professional athletes do, so that they're ready when they go out there.
Yeah, man. I know.
I don't know. And then I think about the Big Bang Theory episode where Howard is asked to throw a pitch out because he's an astronaut, because that's a plot line of the Big Bang Theory.
Oh my God.
And he decides to use a robot and it just goes very poorly.
Oh shit.
I don't, that's all I could think of. And it's like, and it's true. I don't need everyone to be able to be a professional level player, right? If Dr. Fauci could throw a 90-mile-per-hour fastball, he probably wouldn't be the guy in the CDC, right?
Yeah, right.
Wouldn't be his job. But I'd like to think that, you could get it over the plate, even if you lob it, even if you throw it underhand.
Well, that's what I mean, is it feels like every time you see somebody really screw it up, it's because they were trying to, like, throw as hard as they could and, like, try and hit it right over the plate. And it's just like, you don't need to do that. They purposely make it so that there's no batter and nobody else on the field because, like, that's not the point of what you're doing.
Yeah, you're playing catch. You're not pitching. It's not, what would be crazy? Hi, MLB. You're in need of some new ideas right now. You're not the NBA with your 17-inch video screens in the stands, and people can be virtual attendees. Have you seen this? It's crazy.
Man.
I read how to do it. Like, you have to be approved, you have to pay, and you have to be there the whole game. If you're vacant for any amount of time, they'll resell your seat, and you will be kicked out of the Microsoft Teams call. Because also Microsoft Teams is what the NBA is using for that. But MLB, you're looking for something new, you're looking for something crazy, you're looking for a way to really give a home field advantage, or to get rid of the home field advantage because the home team goes second. That first pitch That's the first pitch of the game.
That should be the actual first pitch of the game.
You got Dr. Fauci on the mound. You got, I don't know, current
Cardi
baseball
B.
players. No, not Cardi B.
You mean other baseball players? Yeah, you know that famous home run hitter.
Cardi B. He plays for the Angels. No, you have David Ortiz at the plate because it's 2008, and he throws the ball, and David Ortiz hits a home run.
It's a line drive right down and kills Fauci.
You gotta play off that first pitch.
Oh,
that would really, that's some money ball right there, Brad Pitt.
Oh God.
Or is it Jonah Hill's idea? I've never seen that movie. Okay, so we've talked for a while, but there's something I need to talk about outside of this, but I promise it will be quick because I am still confused as to what it is.
Okay, let's do it, man. Let's wrap this thing up with a confusing paradox.
Apparently, 3 years ago, I went to a karaoke birthday party for one of my friends' friends, right? So I'm a secondary invite? Does that make me a secondary or a tertiary? I'm a secondary invitee to this.
Were you a +1 or were you a +1's+1?
I was a +1.
Okay.
So I'm a secondary invitee. I'm a +1 at this karaoke birthday party. Things that stuck with me from that night is someone sang Tequila at karaoke, and I'm not entirely sure if it wasn't the dude who wound up on America's Got Talent doing that. I feel like on some level it was that guy, and I didn't realize that I was witnessing history. I mean, that woman who sang the Mary J. Blige song, I used to play Wii bowling with her at JC's Tavern long before it became The Woods. Like, she was on Ellen.
I'm sorry, were you waiting for me to react to
No.
that?
I mean, that might have been the most Devon Decker thing I've ever said. No, the most Devon Decker thing I've ever said will come at the very end of the episode. So I went to this birthday party. Someone sang Tequila. Someone sang Africa by Toto. And the karaoke lyrics were so wrong. Sure as Kilimanjaro rises like a leopard above the Serengeti. I'm like, that's not even Hold Me Close to Tony Danza. Nobody thinks the word there is leopard. It's very clearly Olympus.
It almost makes me feel like somebody didn't actually get the rights to Toto and they were trying very hard to not get caught at the karaoke company.
Yeah, it was a weird moment. And then the last thing, which I do not recall, all I have is something that I wrote on Facebook 3 years ago that showed up this morning and has set me down my greatest adventure of this week, is the song New Flame by Chris Brown featuring Usher and Rick Ross. Do you know the song New Flame?
I know the song New Flame. I won't say that I'm like intimately familiar with it in any way. Don't tend to get that intimate with Rick Ross or Chris Brown.
I mean, Usher. We all have Usher stories.
I mean, I'd love to get intimate with Usher, but that's a different thing.
I love saying his name. But yeah, it's one of those situations where it's not a great karaoke song, but I sat there and was like, I need to learn this song. And I have been slacking over the last 3 years to learn the lyrics of New Flame. So now I am, because what else am I doing? Embarking on a journey to learn all of New Flame. So that should be fun for me.
All right. Well, I look forward to you completing this journey and we getting a rendition of it, probably an after credit scene on not this episode, but this show.
Certainly an episode down the line. But I just the exact words I wrote are, my new goal is to learn all of the lyrics to New Flame, whatever that is.
I mean, I've been trying to learn all the lyrics to Charles in Charge. Yes, he couldn't even remember the name yet. I'm still working on it. Yeah.
Charles in Charge?
Yep.
Oh shoot! How does that? I didn't know how it starts.
There's a new boy in the
New
neighborhood.
boy in the neighborhood lives
Yep.
downstairs and it's understood.
Yeah.
He's there just to take good care of me. Like
Like
he's one of the
the
family.
family. Yeah, there you go.
Charles in charge of our days and our nights. Charles in charge. Charles in charge of our wrongs and our rights. And I want Charles in charge of me.
You stole it, Devon. You stole my flame away. Now I have no reason to learn it.
Well, now, well, maybe I can give you a new flame. And that's it. And now for the final thing, which will tie into the Sejohn. Before I go into it, is there anything else that you would like to add to this episode?
No, man. No. Let's wrap this sucker
Okay,
up.
let's wrap it up. So, if you would like to talk to me on the internet, I can be found at Devon D. Decker. And if you go look at me right now, you will see that I commented on a picture that Sarah Silverman, the Sarah Silverman, shared of the fact that she's been losing hair in the shower. Mm-hmm. And in 2015, I went to a taping of Doug Loves Movies, and one of the prizes was a shower cap full of Sarah Silverman's hair that she gave. It's not like someone else acquired it. Sarah Silverman, her contribution to the prize package was a shower cap full of her hair. And so I took a photo of it last night and said, if you need this hair I won from you in 2015 back, let me know and I can send it to you. And that's the most Devon Decker thing I've ever said.
I swear, I'm not a creep. I've not been collecting your hair without your knowledge.
You gave me this hair, and if you need it back, I'm a real mensch about that.
We just needed that out there, because when the legal case comes along, we need evidence that Devon made an effort.
And also, I have the episode on tape where she's like, this is some of my hair. But it's been interesting to, you put yourself out on the internet sometimes, and you get to see what people are. The biggest, talk about it is someone said that I need to cut my fingernails. And, I don't see the problem with my nail. It's clean. It's a little long, but not, gross long. It's all uniform.
Yeah, man. It's people just looking for a reason to dig on other people.
Right? It's just, it was it really distilled down what the internet is. But I will also say, because at this point, I'm just promoting myself, that someone said, this is the most normal thing to happen in 2020. So that's my Magic Courage. And if you want to see it, you can find me on Twitter at Devon D. Decker.
Oh, man. Yeah, I how do I even follow that up? Look, I'm still on the lookout for, new shit. So if you've got, a new sitcom that you want to send my way, or if you know a way to get a hold of some Drew Carey show shit, you DM the fuck out of me. You can catch me at Siege versus the World.
If you are Drew Carey, get in touch with Sejohn. I bet you could help him out. I bet you could.
Dude, I just want to sit down and enjoy your shit. Even if I have to go to your house to watch them because you're not allowed to release them to public, I will come over and we will hang out. I will make coffee beer. In fact, I'm making a coffee beer. Literally to my left is a beer based on your fucking shit, man. All right, anyway.
Buzz Beer? You making Buzz Beer? That sounds like fun.
Heavily inspired by Buzz Beer, yes.
This would be an easier thing to request back when you still lived in Ohio, because I imagine that he still lives in Ohio. And he just flies to The Price is Right every day. Also,
why would you ever leave? Cleveland rocks, man. Cleveland rocks.
Will, take us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.